The billionaire mindset. Why the rich think differently now. What if the biggest difference between someone who struggles financially and someone who becomes a billionaire is not intelligence, luck, or even opportunity? What if the real difference is how they think? Because the truth is this: the wealthiest people in the world do not see reality the same way most people do. They look at problems differently. They look at money differently. They even look at failure differently. And this is not motivational talk. It's observable reality. Why does someone like Elon Musk risk everything again and again, while most people are terrified to even change jobs? Why did Jeff Bezos start selling books in a garage when the internet barely existed? Why did Warren Buffett start investing at age 11, while other kids were thinking about toys? These people didn't just build companies, they built a completely different mental operating system. A mindset that sees opportunity where others see fear. A mindset that thinks decades ahead while others think about the next paycheck. A mindset that transforms obstacles into stepping stones. And here's the powerful part. This way of thinking is not reserved for billionaires. It is a trainable mental framework. In this video, you will discover the real principles behind the billionaire mindset. Not the cliches you hear online, but the deeper patterns that shape how the rich think, decide, and act. If you truly understand these ideas, something inside you will shift. Your perception of money will change. Your perception of risk will change. And most importantly, your perception of what is possible for your life will change. So take a deep breath, focus for the next moments, and ask yourself one honest question. What if the life you want is waiting on the other side of a new way of thinking? Let's begin. Topic 1. The first shift. Billionaires train their minds to see opportunity where others see fear. Before a billion-dollar company exists, before a breakthrough idea appears, before a fortune is built, something invisible happens first, a shift in perception. The world does not suddenly become full of opportunities only for the rich. The truth is much simpler and much more powerful. Opportunities have always been there. Most people simply cannot see them. And this is one of the deepest psychological differences between the average mindset and what we call the billionaire mindset. Most people are conditioned from childhood to focus on problems. Think about it for a moment. School trains us to avoid mistakes. Society teaches us to seek security. Our environment constantly reinforces the idea that risk is dangerous and uncertainty should be avoided. So, when a challenge appears, the mind automatically reacts with caution. This might fail. This looks risky. This is probably not a good idea. What if this doesn't work? And in that very moment, something subtle but powerful happens. The brain closes the door to possibility, because opportunity rarely arrives wearing the comfortable face of certainty. Opportunity almost always arrives disguised as chaos, confusion, or difficulty. The billionaire mind interprets that moment completely differently. Instead of asking, "What could go wrong?" it begins with a radically different question. What could this become? That single question changes everything. Because when the mind becomes curious instead of fearful, it starts searching for potential rather than protection. Instead of shutting down possibilities, it begins expanding them. And if you observe the lives of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, you will notice that this pattern appears again and again. Take Elon Musk, for example. When Musk began investing in electric vehicles, the global automotive industry believed electric cars were impractical. Experts argued that battery technology was too expensive, infrastructure didn't exist, and consumers would never abandon gasoline. From the outside, the idea looked like an enormous problem. But Musk did not see the problem first. He saw the transformation of an entire industry. While others focused on the obstacles, he focused on the possibility hidden behind them. A future where transportation could become sustainable, innovative, and technologically advanced. And today, Tesla is not just a car company. It became one of the most valuable companies in the world. The same pattern appears in the story of Jeff Bezos. In the mid-1990s, the internet was still a mystery to most people. Very few understood what it could become. Many considered it a passing technological curiosity. Yet Bezos saw a simple statistic that changed everything in his mind. Internet usage was growing at an extraordinary rate. Instead of seeing uncertainty, he saw momentum. Instead of seeing risk, he saw potential. So he started selling books online from a small garage. At the time, it seemed almost ridiculous to many observers. But what Bezos truly saw was not an online bookstore. He saw the beginning of a completely new economy. And that small experiment eventually evolved into Amazon, one of the most influential companies on the planet. This is the hidden mental pattern behind extraordinary wealth creation. Visionaries do not wait for the world to confirm an opportunity before acting. They perceive the possibility before it becomes obvious. They develop the ability to detect what others overlook. Warren Buffett once explained this mindset with remarkable clarity when he said that the best opportunities appear when people are pessimistic. When fear dominates the collective mindset, most people withdraw. They become cautious. They wait. They delay action. But the few who maintain clarity in those moments are able to see what the crowd cannot. During economic crises, markets fall, companies struggle, and uncertainty spreads. For many people, that environment feels dangerous. But for those who understand opportunity, those moments can become gateways to extraordinary growth. History shows that many of the world's greatest fortunes were built during times of instability, when vision and courage allowed certain individuals to act while everyone else hesitated. But here is the most important realization of all. This way of thinking is not something you are born with. It is something you train. Your mind can be conditioned to search for problems, or it can be conditioned to search for potential. Every time you face a difficult situation, you are unconsciously strengthening one of those patterns. If your first instinct is fear, hesitation, and avoidance, your brain becomes better and better at protecting you from uncertainty. But if your first instinct becomes curiosity, exploration, and possibility, your brain begins developing an entirely different mental muscle. Over time, this shift transforms the way you experience reality. Situations that once looked intimidating start to look intriguing. Obstacles that once felt discouraging begin to appear as puzzles waiting to be solved. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking a far more powerful question. What opportunity might be hidden here? And when you consistently ask that question, something extraordinary happens. Your awareness expands. Ideas appear where they did not appear before. Connections form between concepts that once seemed unrelated. Possibilities start revealing themselves in places you would have previously ignored. In other words, you begin seeing the world through the lens of creation rather than limitation. This is why the billionaire mindset is not fundamentally about money. It is about perception. Money, businesses, innovation, and prosperity often emerge as natural consequences of a deeper psychological shift, the ability to recognize potential before the rest of the world notices it. And the moment that shift begins inside you, something powerful changes. The world stops looking like a place full of barriers and starts looking like a landscape full of hidden doors. Doors that most people walk past every single day, without ever realizing they were there. The billionaire mindset begins with the courage to stop seeing only the problem and start seeing the possibility that the problem is secretly hiding. Topic 2. Billionaires play the long game. While most people chase immediate results. One of the quiet secrets behind extraordinary wealth is something that almost no one talks about enough. Time. Not the time on a clock, but the way successful people think about time. Most people are unconsciously trained to think in very short time horizons. They think about the next paycheck, the next bill, the next month, maybe the next year if they are planning carefully. Their decisions revolve around immediate comfort and quick results. If something doesn't produce a visible reward quickly, it often feels discouraging. Doubt appears, motivation fades, the effort stops. But the billionaire mindset operates on a completely different timeline. Instead of asking, "How quickly can this pay off?" billionaires tend to ask something much more powerful. What could this become in 10 years? That question alone separates the thinkers of the short game from the builders of the long game, because real wealth rarely appears instantly. It grows slowly, almost invisibly at first, like a seed under the soil. For a long time, nothing seems to be happening. No applause, no headlines, no recognition. But beneath the surface, something powerful is developing. Warren Buffett understood this better than almost anyone in history. When Buffett made his first investments as a teenager, he wasn't thinking about quick profits. He was fascinated by something deeper. The idea that money, when invested wisely, could grow by itself over time. He became obsessed with the concept of compounding. Compounding is simple in theory, but astonishing in its long-term effect. When returns begin generating their own returns, growth starts accelerating. What begins slowly eventually becomes exponential. Buffett often explains that most of his wealth did not come from sudden breakthroughs. It came from decades of patience and disciplined thinking. In fact, a large portion of his fortune appeared after the age of 60, even though he had been investing his entire life. Why? Because compounding needs time to reveal its full power. Yet most people abandon their efforts long before that moment arrives. The same principle appears in business. When Jeff Bezos started Amazon, he made decisions that confused many investors. For years, Amazon reinvested its profits instead of maximizing short-term earnings. The company focused on growth, infrastructure, and long-term dominance rather than immediate financial comfort. Many critics believed this strategy was reckless, but Bezos repeatedly emphasized a simple philosophy. Amazon was willing to make decisions that might take 5 or even 7 years to fully reveal their impact. That kind of patience is rare. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, long-term thinking feels almost unnatural. But it is precisely this patience that allows visionary leaders to build extraordinary companies. Think about how different your decisions would become if you consistently asked yourself one powerful question before acting. How will this decision affect my life 10 years from now? Suddenly, many short-term temptations lose their power. The habits you build today begin to look like investments rather than chores. The books you read, the skills you develop, the relationships you cultivate, all of these begin to resemble seeds being planted for the future. Billionaires understand something that many people overlook. The future is shaped by the accumulation of thousands of small decisions made today. Every action compounds, every habit compounds, every mindset compounds. If your decisions consistently favor comfort over growth, that pattern compounds into stagnation. But if your decisions consistently favor learning, discipline, and opportunity, that pattern compounds into momentum. Over time, the gap between these two trajectories becomes enormous. This is why the billionaire mindset is deeply connected to patience and vision. Vision allows someone to imagine a future that does not yet exist. Patience allows them to continue building toward that future, even when immediate results are invisible. Elon Musk demonstrated this mindset when he began developing SpaceX. Private space exploration sounded almost absurd to many people at the time. Rockets were incredibly expensive, failures were frequent, and the financial risk was enormous. In fact, the early years of SpaceX were filled with failed launches and near bankruptcy. Most people would have abandoned the mission after the first or second failure. But Musk was not thinking about the next year. He was thinking about the next generation. His vision was to drastically reduce the cost of space travel and eventually make humanity a multi-planetary species. That kind of goal cannot be achieved with short-term thinking. It requires years of persistence, experimentation, and belief. Eventually, SpaceX succeeded in doing something no private company had ever accomplished before, building reusable rockets that dramatically lowered the cost of space missions. What once looked like a reckless dream began reshaping the future of space exploration. This pattern reveals an important truth about wealth and success. The world often rewards those who can tolerate delayed gratification. While others chase immediate rewards, the patient builder quietly accumulates advantage. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, networks compound, investments compound. And then one day, what seems slow suddenly appears extraordinary. But from the outside, people often misunderstand that moment. They see the success and call it luck. They see the fortune and call it genius. They see the breakthrough and call it overnight success. What they do not see are the years of disciplined thinking that made that moment possible. The billionaire mindset understands that true growth is rarely dramatic at the beginning. It is gradual, subtle, and often invisible. But those who stay committed to the long game eventually reach a point where their efforts begin producing results that look almost miraculous. If you begin adopting this mindset in your own life, something remarkable happens. Your relationship with time changes. You stop measuring progress by days or weeks. Instead, you begin thinking in seasons, in years, sometimes even in decades. You start planting seeds not just for tomorrow, but for the future version of yourself that will one day benefit from the discipline you choose today. And that is one of the most profound shifts behind the billionaire mindset. They are not simply building for the present moment. They are building for a future that most people are not patient enough to imagine. Topic 3. Billionaires invest in their minds. Before they invest in anything else, before fortunes are built, before companies dominate industries, before wealth multiplies in markets and investments, something far more important is developed first: a powerful mind. This may sound simple, almost obvious, but if you carefully observe the habits of the world's wealthiest individuals, you will notice a striking pattern. They invest enormous energy into learning. Long before money begins working for them, they train their thinking to work better. Most people imagine that billionaires spend their time only managing companies, negotiating deals, or analyzing markets. But many of the most successful individuals in history share a quieter habit that often goes unnoticed. They read constantly. Warren Buffett, for example, is famous for dedicating a large portion of his day to reading. Early in his career, he reportedly spent up to 80% of his time studying financial reports, books, and market information. Bill Gates has maintained a similar habit for decades. Even while leading one of the most powerful technology companies in history, he protected time every day for reading and deep thinking. Why? Because knowledge compounds. Just like money invested wisely can grow exponentially over time, ideas and insights accumulate in the mind and begin forming powerful connections. Each book adds a new perspective. Each article introduces a new concept. Each lesson from experience sharpens judgment. Over time, these fragments of knowledge begin forming a network inside the brain, a mental library that allows someone to make better decisions, recognize patterns faster, and solve complex problems more effectively. This is why many billionaires treat learning almost like a strategic advantage. While others spend their free time consuming distractions, they are quietly absorbing information that expands their understanding of the world. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, often explained that success comes from developing what he called a latticework of mental models. A mental model is simply a way of understanding how something works. It might come from economics, psychology, mathematics, engineering, biology, or philosophy. The more models you understand, the more tools your mind has available when making decisions. Imagine trying to build a house with only one tool. Progress would be slow, frustrating, and limited. But when you have an entire toolbox, suddenly complex problems become manageable. The billionaire mindset treats knowledge like that toolbox. Instead of limiting themselves to one field of thinking, many successful individuals study across disciplines. They explore science, economics, technology, human behavior, and history. Why history? Because history reveals patterns, and patterns reveal opportunity. If you understand how industries evolve, how markets react to fear and optimism, and how human psychology influences decisions, you begin noticing signals that others miss. This ability to connect knowledge from different areas is one of the reasons visionary entrepreneurs often see the future before the majority does. Steve Jobs demonstrated this principle beautifully. Jobs was not only interested in technology, he studied design, art, typography, philosophy, and even Eastern spirituality. Many people initially believed these interests were unrelated to building computers, but those influences later shaped the philosophy behind Apple's products. Jobs understood that technology could be not only powerful but also elegant, intuitive, and emotionally engaging. The intersection of technology and design became one of Apple's greatest strengths, and it all began with curiosity. The billionaire mindset protects curiosity like a precious resource. Curiosity leads to learning. Learning leads to insight. Insight leads to better decisions, and better decisions lead to extraordinary outcomes. But there is another subtle element to this pattern. True learners are not obsessed with proving they are right. They are obsessed with discovering what is true. That means they are willing to change their minds when new information appears. They are willing to admit mistakes. They are willing to update their beliefs. This intellectual humility allows their thinking to evolve continuously. Jeff Bezos once explained that the smartest people are those who frequently revise their opinions. They do not cling to ideas simply because those ideas once seemed correct. Instead, they adapt. This mindset keeps them flexible in a world that is constantly changing. Industries transform, technologies evolve, markets shift, consumer behaviors adapt. Those who refuse to update their thinking eventually fall behind. But those who keep learning remain capable of navigating new realities. And in the modern world, knowledge is more accessible than ever before. Books, lectures, courses, research, interviews, documentaries, and digital libraries exist at a scale unimaginable just a few decades ago. Yet the paradox is that access to knowledge has increased while deep learning has decreased. Why? Because attention has become fragmented. Distractions compete for every moment of focus. But the billionaire mindset recognizes something profound. Attention is one of the most valuable resources a human being possesses. Where your attention goes, your understanding grows. If your attention is constantly scattered across superficial information, your thinking remains shallow. But if your attention is directed toward learning deeply about meaningful subjects, your thinking becomes sharper, broader, and more powerful. Over time, this difference becomes enormous. It influences the quality of your ideas. It influences the quality of your decisions. And ultimately, it influences the trajectory of your life. This is why many of the most successful individuals treat learning not as a hobby, but as a lifelong discipline. They read when others relax. They study when others scroll endlessly through distractions. They reflect when others react impulsively. Slowly, almost quietly, their minds become more capable of navigating complexity. And when opportunity appears, they are prepared. Because the billionaire mindset understands something fundamental. The greatest investment you can ever make is not in stocks, real estate, or businesses. It is in the expansion of your own mind. Once your thinking grows powerful enough, opportunities begin appearing in places that once looked ordinary. And when that happens, wealth often becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Topic 4. Billionaires turn failure into feedback. While most people let failure define them. One of the most misunderstood aspects of success is failure. Most people see failure as a signal to stop, a warning that something went wrong, proof that the idea wasn't good enough, the timing wasn't right, or perhaps that they themselves were not capable enough. And because of that interpretation, failure often becomes a wall, a moment where dreams quietly dissolve. But the billionaire mindset treats failure in a completely different way, not as a verdict, but as information. In the world of innovation, failure is rarely the opposite of success. It is part of the path toward it. If you look closely at the stories of some of the most influential entrepreneurs and wealth creators in history, you will find something surprising. Their journeys are filled with failure, not small, comfortable failures, but enormous, public, painful failures that would have convinced most people to give up. Take Elon Musk again as an example. Before Tesla became one of the most valuable companies in the world, the company stood on the edge of collapse more than once. Early production problems, financial pressure, and constant skepticism created a storm that nearly destroyed the company. But perhaps an even more dramatic story happened with SpaceX. In the early years, the first 3 rocket launches failed. Each one ended in explosion. Each failure cost millions of dollars. Each failure attracted intense criticism from media and industry experts. By the time the 3rd rocket exploded, the company was nearly out of money. Most people in that situation would have interpreted those failures as clear evidence that the mission was impossible. But Musk interpreted them differently. Each explosion was data. Each mistake revealed something about engineering, systems, or processes that needed to improve. The team studied the failures, learned from them, refined their designs, and tried again. On the 4th launch, the rocket finally reached orbit. That single success transformed the future of the company. Shortly after that moment, NASA awarded SpaceX a contract that would help stabilize the company and launch it into global prominence. From the outside, it looked like a sudden breakthrough, but from the inside, it was the result of persistence through repeated failure. This pattern appears everywhere in the history of innovation. Thomas Edison famously conducted thousands of experiments while trying to develop the practical electric light bulb. When asked about those unsuccessful attempts, he didn't describe them as failures. He said he had simply discovered thousands of ways that did not work. That mindset transforms frustration into progress. Instead of thinking, "I failed," the billionaire mindset asks a different question. What did this experience teach me? That shift may seem small, but psychologically it is enormous. When failure becomes a lesson rather than a personal judgment, the mind remains open. Curiosity replaces shame. Learning replaces defeat. Momentum continues. This is critical because innovation almost always requires experimentation, and experimentation naturally includes mistakes. If someone cannot tolerate mistakes, they will never explore bold ideas. And if bold ideas are never explored, extraordinary results rarely appear. This is one reason many billionaires develop an unusually high tolerance for uncertainty and setbacks. They understand that progress often emerges through trial and error. Jeff Bezos once explained that innovation and experimentation are inseparable. If a company is not failing occasionally, it likely means it is not experimenting enough. In other words, avoiding failure completely often means avoiding growth. But there is an important nuance here. The billionaire mindset does not celebrate failure for its own sake. Failure is valuable only when it produces learning. If someone repeats the same mistake again and again without reflection, nothing is gained. But if each failure generates insight that improves the next attempt, the process becomes incredibly powerful. It transforms obstacles into stepping stones. It turns frustration into refinement. It converts disappointment into progress. Over time, this mindset builds resilience. Resilience is the quiet force that allows people to continue moving forward even when circumstances become difficult. And the truth is, every ambitious goal eventually encounters difficulty. Businesses face competition. Investments experience volatility. Ideas encounter skepticism. The difference between those who eventually succeed and those who stop trying often comes down to one simple factor: interpretation. If failure is interpreted as a final verdict, progress ends. But if failure is interpreted as feedback, progress continues. Psychologically, this distinction is profound. People who adopt a feedback mindset remain engaged with the process. They become students of their own experiences. They analyze outcomes, refine strategies, and keep moving forward. Eventually, their understanding deepens, their skills sharpen, their judgment improves, and gradually, their results begin to change. From the outside, observers often call this persistence determination, grit, or resilience. But underneath all those qualities lies a deeper belief. The belief that failure is not the end of the story. It is simply part of the process of discovering what works. This belief is one of the most powerful engines behind the billionaire mindset. It frees the mind from the paralyzing fear of making mistakes. It encourages experimentation. It invites learning. And it transforms the journey toward success into an ongoing process of refinement rather than a fragile attempt to be perfect. Once this perspective becomes part of your thinking, something liberating happens. The fear of trying begins to fade. You start approaching challenges with curiosity rather than anxiety. You begin understanding that every meaningful pursuit includes setbacks, and those setbacks are not signs that the path is wrong. They are signals that you are actively engaged in the process of creating something meaningful. The billionaire mindset does not avoid failure. It studies it. It learns from it. And ultimately, it uses failure as fuel for the next breakthrough. Topic 5. Billionaires focus on creating value. While most people focus only on making money, one of the most surprising truths about wealth is that the people who build the largest fortunes are rarely obsessed with money itself. At first glance, this sounds contradictory. After all, billionaires are associated with immense financial success. But if you look closely at how many of them think and operate, you begin to notice a deeper pattern. Their primary focus is not money, it is value. Most people approach work, business, and opportunity with a single question in mind: how can I make more money? There is nothing inherently wrong with that question. Wanting financial stability and prosperity is natural. But when money becomes the only focus, something important often disappears from the equation: contribution. The billionaire mindset reverses this perspective in a powerful way. Instead of asking, "How can I make money?" it asks a much more transformative question: how can I create something so valuable that money naturally follows? This shift changes everything. Because when you focus on value creation, your attention moves towards solving problems, improving experiences, and building things that genuinely matter to people. And in a market-driven world, value is what attracts wealth. Consider the story of Steve Jobs. When Jobs co-founded Apple, his goal was not simply to sell computers. He wanted to build machines that felt intuitive, elegant, and empowering to the people who use them. At the time, most computers were technical tools designed primarily for engineers and specialists. Jobs imagined something different. He imagined technology that could be accessible, beautiful, and deeply integrated into everyday life. This obsession with creating a superior experience led to products like the Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. Each of these innovations transformed entire industries. And because Apple consistently delivered extraordinary value to millions of people, the company eventually became one of the most valuable corporations in the world. Money followed value. The same pattern appears in the story of Amazon. Jeff Bezos did not build Amazon by simply trying to extract profit from customers. From the very beginning, his philosophy centered on customer obsession. He asked a simple but powerful question: what would make the customer experience better? Faster delivery, lower prices, greater convenience, a massive selection of products. By relentlessly improving these aspects of the experience, Amazon created enormous value for consumers. And as millions of people began relying on the platform, the company's financial growth accelerated dramatically. Again, wealth emerged as a consequence of value. This principle operates in almost every successful business and industry. Companies that solve meaningful problems attract attention. They build trust. They create loyalty. And loyalty becomes a powerful economic force. But the concept of value goes beyond products and services. It also applies to individuals. In any professional field, people who consistently provide high value become indispensable. A leader who inspires and develops others creates value. An entrepreneur who introduces a breakthrough idea creates value. A professional who masters complex skills and delivers exceptional results creates value. Over time, the marketplace naturally rewards those contributions. This is why the billionaire mindset focuses intensely on improvement. They constantly ask themselves how their ideas, products, or systems can become better. How can this solution be faster? How can this experience be easier? How can this service improve people's lives? When these questions guide decision-making, innovation becomes inevitable, and innovation tends to generate extraordinary financial outcomes. But there is another subtle element to this mindset. People who focus on value tend to think bigger. If someone is only chasing money, their thinking often becomes limited to small, immediate opportunities. But when someone becomes obsessed with creating value, they begin exploring ideas that can impact thousands, millions, or even billions of people. This scale of thinking dramatically changes what becomes possible. Consider the founders of Google. Larry Page and Sergey Brin did not simply want to create another search engine. Their vision was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That vision was about value on a global scale. Today, billions of people rely on Google's tools every single day. And the company's financial success reflects the immense value it provides to society. The billionaire mindset understands a fundamental economic truth. Money is not the starting point of wealth creation. It is the result. It flows toward ideas, products, and services that improve lives, solve problems, and expand possibilities. When someone becomes deeply committed to creating value, their attention naturally shifts away from short-term financial gain. Instead, they focus on building something meaningful. Ironically, this shift often increases financial success. Because when people trust the value you provide, they willingly support it. They buy your product. They recommend your service. They invest in your vision. Over time, this trust becomes one of the most powerful forces behind sustainable wealth. And perhaps the most inspiring aspect of this principle is that it applies to anyone. You do not need billions of dollars to begin creating value. You can start by improving your skills, helping others solve problems, and contributing ideas that make processes, products, or experiences better. Each time you focus on contribution instead of extraction, you strengthen the mindset that drives long-term success. The billionaire mindset understands that wealth is not built by chasing money. It is built by creating something so useful, so impactful, and so valuable that money naturally begins to flow in your direction. Topic 6. Billionaires think in systems. While most people think only in tasks, one of the quietest yet most powerful differences between the billionaire mindset and the average mindset is the way successful people think about work. Most people spend their lives thinking in terms of tasks. They wake up with a list of things to do, finish the report, answer emails, attend meetings, complete assignments, solve immediate problems. And while completing tasks is necessary, task-based thinking has a hidden limitation. Tasks end. You finish one, and another appears. Then another. Then another. Life becomes a continuous cycle of effort that produces results only while you are actively working. The billionaire mindset looks at work from a completely different angle. Instead of asking, "What tasks do I need to complete today?" it asks a deeper question. What system can I build that will produce results continuously? This shift from tasks to systems is one of the greatest accelerators of wealth creation, because a system has a remarkable property. Once it works, it continues generating results even when you are not personally involved in every step. Think about the difference between catching one fish and building a fishing system that catches fish every day. The first approach solves today's problem. The second approach transforms the future. This is how many of the world's most powerful companies operate. Ray Kroc, the man responsible for transforming McDonald's into a global empire, did not simply focus on selling hamburgers. His real genius was creating a system. He built processes so precise and repeatable that the same quality of food and service could be delivered anywhere in the world. From the layout of the kitchen to the preparation of the food to the training of employees, every step was designed to function like a reliable machine. Because of that system, McDonald's expanded across continents. Millions of customers could receive the same experience regardless of location. The business was no longer dependent on a single person's effort. It was powered by a scalable system. Jeff Bezos applied a similar philosophy at Amazon. Instead of building a company that depended on constant human intervention, Amazon developed technological and logistical systems capable of operating at extraordinary scale. Automated warehouses, sophisticated algorithms, and advanced distribution networks made it possible to deliver products to millions of customers efficiently. Those systems became the engine behind Amazon's explosive growth. The billionaire mindset constantly searches for ways to transform effort into structure. Instead of solving the same problem repeatedly, it asks how the problem can be solved permanently. Instead of depending on personal labor, it designs mechanisms that allow processes to run automatically. This principle also appears in investing. When someone works for money, their income is tied directly to their time and effort. But when someone builds systems of investment, businesses, assets, intellectual property, or financial portfolios, those systems begin generating income independently. Warren Buffett's investments in companies like Coca-Cola or American Express represent systems of value creation. Once the investment is made, those companies continue producing goods, serving customers, and generating profits. Buffett does not need to personally sell beverages or process credit card transactions. The system does the work. Over time, this distinction becomes enormous. Someone focused only on tasks can achieve success through hard work, but someone who builds systems can multiply the impact of that work far beyond personal effort. The billionaire mindset, therefore, prioritizes leverage. Leverage means using resources that amplify your ability to produce results. Technology is leverage. Capital is leverage. Networks of talented people are leverage. Processes and automation are leverage. Every time a system replaces repetitive effort, time becomes available for more strategic thinking. Instead of being trapped inside daily operations, visionary thinkers step back and ask bigger questions. How can this process become more efficient? How can this idea reach more people? How can this system operate without constant supervision? These questions unlock scale, and scale is one of the defining characteristics of billionaire thinking. When Elon Musk founded companies like Tesla and SpaceX, he was not merely launching products. He was building systems designed to reshape entire industries. Tesla created a vertically integrated system of electric vehicle production, battery technology, and software innovation. SpaceX built a system capable of developing reusable rockets, drastically reducing the cost of space travel. These systems did not produce results once. They produced results continuously. But this mindset does not only apply to massive corporations. It can also transform personal productivity and professional growth. For example, someone who repeatedly solves the same problem manually may eventually realize that the problem could be automated with software. Another person may discover that documenting a process allows others to perform it effectively, freeing their time for more creative or strategic work. Each improvement converts effort into structure, and each structure becomes a system. Over time, a life built on systems becomes far more powerful than a life built only on effort. Because effort has limits, but systems can grow. This is why the billionaire mindset constantly seeks leverage. Not because successful people are lazy, but because they understand something fundamental about the modern world. The greatest impact rarely comes from working harder. It comes from designing smarter systems. systems that allow ideas to expand beyond the limits of a single person's time, energy, or attention. Once you begin thinking this way, your perspective on work changes dramatically. Instead of asking how much effort something requires today, you begin asking whether that effort can eventually create a structure that produces results again and again. And when that shift happens, your actions begin aligning with the deeper patterns that have built some of the most powerful fortunes in human history. The billionaire mindset does not simply complete tasks. It designs systems that keep creating value long after the original work is done. Topic 7. Billionaires control their emotions. While most people let emotions control their decisions, if there is one invisible force that quietly shapes financial success or failure, it is not intelligence, education, or even opportunity. It is emotional control. Money decisions are rarely purely logical. They are deeply influenced by fear, excitement, impatience, ego, and doubt. These emotions move markets, destroy businesses, and influence the everyday choices people make about risk, investment, and opportunity. The billionaire mindset recognizes something most people never fully understand. Your emotions can either become your greatest strategic advantage or your greatest liability. Most people react emotionally to circumstances. When markets fall, fear spreads quickly. Investors panic. They sell assets at the worst possible moment. When markets rise, excitement takes over. People rush to invest when prices are already inflated. This emotional cycle repeats over and over again. Fear leads to bad decisions. Excitement leads to bad decisions. And the people who consistently win in the long run are often those who remain calm while everyone else reacts impulsively. Warren Buffett once summarized this principle with a simple but powerful idea. He said that investors should be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. This statement is not about recklessness. It is about emotional discipline. When everyone is euphoric, opportunities are often overpriced. When everyone is afraid, opportunities are often undervalued. But only those who control their emotions can take advantage of these moments, because emotional pressure can be overwhelming. When markets collapse and headlines predict economic disaster, fear spreads like wildfire. Rational thinking becomes difficult. Even experienced individuals can feel the urge to retreat. Yet some of the most legendary investors built their fortunes during those very moments. During the financial crisis of 2008, when global markets were collapsing and uncertainty dominated the economy, many investors fled the market. But Buffett invested billions of dollars in companies he believed would survive and eventually thrive. At the time, those decisions looked risky. Years later, they looked visionary. The difference was emotional control. Buffett's decisions were guided by long-term reasoning rather than short-term fear. The same principle appears in entrepreneurship. Building companies involves constant uncertainty. Markets change, competitors appear, strategies fail, unexpected problems arise. If every emotional reaction dictated the next decision, progress would become impossible. Elon Musk has experienced intense public criticism, production failures, financial pressure, and technological setbacks throughout his career. During some of Tesla's most difficult periods, analysts predicted the company's collapse. Media outlets questioned Musk's leadership. Investors worried about survival. Under those conditions, emotional reactions could have led to defensive decisions or abandonment of the vision. But Musk continued pursuing the long-term mission. His decisions were guided by belief in the future of sustainable energy rather than the emotional turbulence of the moment. Eventually, Tesla not only survived, but reshaped the automotive industry. Emotional discipline allowed the vision to remain intact. This ability to remain calm under pressure is not accidental. Many billionaires develop habits that protect their mental clarity. Some practice reflection and deep thinking before making major decisions. Others rely on data, analysis, and structured reasoning rather than reacting immediately to external events. In many cases, successful leaders deliberately create distance between emotional stimulus and decision-making. Instead of reacting instantly, they pause. They analyze. They ask themselves whether the decision is based on logic or emotion. This pause is powerful because emotions move quickly, but wisdom moves slowly. When you create space between those two forces, your judgment becomes stronger. The billionaire mindset understands that emotions are not enemies. They are signals. Fear may signal uncertainty. Excitement may signal opportunity. Frustration may signal a problem that requires attention. But those emotions should inform decisions, not dominate them. When emotions take control, perspective shrinks. Short-term discomfort becomes overwhelming. Long-term strategy disappears. Impulsive choices replace thoughtful planning. But when emotional awareness exists alongside discipline, something remarkable happens. The mind remains clear even in difficult circumstances. Challenges become manageable, opportunities remain visible, and decisions become aligned with long-term vision rather than temporary feelings. This is why many successful investors and entrepreneurs emphasize patience. Patience is not passive. It is the active choice to resist emotional impulses in favor of thoughtful action. Over time, emotional discipline compounds just like financial investment. Someone who repeatedly makes calm, rational decisions gradually builds momentum. They avoid catastrophic mistakes. They recognize opportunities others miss. They navigate uncertainty with greater confidence. Eventually, their consistency begins producing extraordinary outcomes. The billionaire mindset, therefore, treats emotional control as a strategic asset, not because successful people never feel fear or doubt, but because they learn to observe those emotions without allowing them to dictate the future. When this level of discipline becomes part of your thinking, your relationship with challenges changes. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding intentionally. Instead of being carried by emotional waves, you learn to navigate them. And in a world where millions of decisions are influenced by panic, impatience, and excitement, the person who remains calm gains an extraordinary advantage. Because while others are reacting, you are thinking. And that difference often determines who merely participates in the game of wealth and who ultimately masters it. Topic 8. Billionaires surround themselves with exceptional people. While most people try to do everything alone, there is a powerful illusion that many people carry about success: the illusion of the self-made individual. We often imagine billionaires as lone geniuses who built everything through personal brilliance and relentless effort. A single visionary working day and night until the world finally recognizes their greatness. But when you examine the real stories behind the world's most successful entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators, a very different picture appears. Extraordinary success is almost never created alone. It is created through powerful networks of talent. The billionaire mindset understands something that many people overlook for years. Your growth is deeply connected to the people around you. Your ideas evolve through conversations. Your opportunities expand through relationships. Your capabilities multiply when you collaborate with individuals who possess strengths you do not. Most people attempt to solve every challenge by themselves. They try to learn everything, do everything, control everything. At first, this approach feels productive. It creates a sense of independence and control, but over time, it becomes limiting. Because no single person can master every skill, anticipate every challenge, or create every breakthrough alone. The billionaire mindset replaces the idea of individual brilliance with the concept of collective intelligence. Instead of asking, "How can I do this alone?" successful leaders ask a different question: who are the best people to build this with? This question has shaped some of the most influential companies in the world. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in the late 1990s, the company was struggling. Products were confusing, innovation had slowed, and the organization lacked clear direction. Jobs understood that rebuilding Apple required more than his own vision. It required assembling extraordinary talent. One of the most important people he worked with was Jony Ive, the designer who would eventually lead the creation of the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and many other iconic Apple products. Jobs provided vision and strategic clarity. Ive brought world-class design thinking. Together, their collaboration transformed Apple into one of the most innovative companies in history. Neither of them could have achieved the same result alone. The same principle appears in the story of Google. Larry Page and Sergey Brin were brilliant researchers when they created the search engine that would eventually dominate the internet. But they also understood the importance of building a team of exceptional engineers, scientists, and leaders capable of scaling their vision. As Google grew, they attracted some of the brightest minds in technology, data science, artificial intelligence, and product development. That collective intelligence allowed the company to expand far beyond its original idea. Search became advertising platforms, cloud computing, mapping technologies, artificial intelligence, and countless digital tools used by billions of people. This kind of growth rarely comes from isolated effort. It emerges when visionary thinking combines with the strengths of extraordinary collaborators. The billionaire mindset actively seeks environments where talented people gather. Successful entrepreneurs attend events, join networks, build partnerships, and engage in conversations that expose them to new perspectives. Why? Because proximity influences possibility. When you spend time around people who think bigger, solve problems creatively, and pursue ambitious goals, your own thinking begins to expand. Ideas that once seemed unrealistic start to feel achievable. Standards rise, expectations grow, energy increases. Psychologists sometimes describe this phenomenon as social influence. Human beings naturally adapt their behaviors, beliefs, and ambitions according to the environment around them. If someone spends most of their time surrounded by people who doubt possibilities, fear risk, and resist growth, those attitudes gradually shape their own mindset. But if someone spends time with innovators, creators, and ambitious thinkers, their perception of what is possible begins to transform. The billionaire mindset, therefore, treats relationships as strategic assets, not transactional relationships based on short-term advantage, but meaningful connections built on trust, respect, and shared vision. Great teams are not simply groups of talented individuals. They are ecosystems of complementary strengths. One person may excel at strategy, another may master engineering, another may understand markets and human behavior. When those abilities converge, something remarkable happens. The group becomes capable of solving problems that no individual could solve alone. This is why many billionaires invest significant time in building the right teams. They understand that talent attracts talent, high standards attract high performers, and a culture of excellence multiplies creativity. Elon Musk's companies are famous for attracting engineers and scientists who want to work on some of the most challenging technological problems in the world. Whether it is electric vehicles, renewable energy, or space exploration, Musk's ventures attract individuals who are driven by ambition and curiosity. That environment becomes a magnet for innovation. But the lesson here is not limited to global corporations. It applies to anyone who wants to grow. The people you learn from, collaborate with, and surround yourself with influence your trajectory more than you may realize. Conversations shape ideas. Ideas shape decisions. Decisions shape results. When you intentionally seek relationships with individuals who challenge you intellectually, inspire you creatively, and support your growth, your progress accelerates. Instead of struggling alone with every obstacle, you gain access to new insights, skills, and opportunities. Over time, your network becomes a living system of shared knowledge and support. And in many cases, the next breakthrough in your life may not come from a book, a course, or a solitary moment of reflection. It may come from a conversation with someone whose perspective expands your vision, someone who sees potential where you once saw limitations, someone who introduces an idea that transforms your path. The billionaire mindset understands that success is not a solo journey. It is a collaborative creation, and those who build the strongest networks of talent, trust, and shared ambition often discover that together, they can achieve things far greater than any individual could accomplish alone. Topic 9. Billionaires master the power of focus. While most people live in constant distraction. In the modern world, one of the rarest and most valuable abilities is not intelligence, talent, or even access to information. It is focus. We live in a time where information flows endlessly. Notifications appear every minute. Messages arrive constantly. News updates compete for attention. Social media platforms are designed to keep the mind jumping from one stimulus to another. And slowly, without most people realizing it, attention becomes fragmented. The mind is always busy, but rarely truly focused. This environment creates a silent advantage for those who develop the opposite habit. The billionaire mindset protects focus like a strategic resource, because extraordinary achievements rarely come from scattered attention. They come from deep concentration directed toward meaningful goals. Think about the magnitude of the projects many billionaires pursue: building global companies, transforming entire industries, developing technologies that redefine the future. These outcomes cannot be created through occasional effort or distracted thinking. They require long periods of sustained mental engagement. Bill Gates once spoke about a habit he practiced during the years when Microsoft was rapidly growing. Twice a year, he would take what he called think weeks. During these retreats, Gates would isolate himself from daily distractions. No meetings, no constant communication, just reading, thinking, analyzing ideas, and exploring long-term strategies. Some of Microsoft's most important innovations and strategic decisions emerged from those focused periods. Why was this powerful? Because uninterrupted thinking allows the mind to explore ideas deeply. When attention remains focused long enough, the brain begins connecting information in ways that scattered thinking cannot achieve. Patterns emerge, solutions appear, new perspectives form. But in a distracted environment, those deeper cognitive processes rarely activate. The billionaire mindset understands that attention is not only valuable, it is limited. Every time attention is divided across dozens of trivial inputs, the brain loses the ability to engage deeply with complex problems. And complex problems are where extraordinary opportunities often hide. Elon Musk has often been described as someone capable of extreme focus. When working on a technical challenge, he can reportedly spend hours analyzing details of engineering systems, production processes, or software design. This level of immersion allows him to understand problems at a level that many leaders never reach. Instead of relying entirely on secondhand information, he dives deeply into the mechanics of how things work. That depth of understanding allows him to make bold decisions with clarity. Focus creates mastery. Mastery creates leverage. And leverage creates extraordinary results. But the billionaire mindset does not rely only on occasional bursts of concentration. It deliberately structures life to protect focus. Many successful individuals reduce unnecessary commitments, eliminate low-value activities, and prioritize the few goals that truly matter. This principle is sometimes called strategic simplicity. The idea is straightforward. If everything feels important, nothing truly receives the attention it deserves. But when someone identifies the most meaningful objectives and channels energy toward them consistently, progress accelerates dramatically. Warren Buffett once illustrated this idea with a simple exercise. He suggested that people write down their 25 most important goals, then select the 5 most critical ones. The remaining 20, he argued, should be treated not as secondary priorities but as distractions. Why? Because dividing attention across too many pursuits weakens progress in all of them. The billionaire mindset, therefore, protects clarity. It chooses carefully where attention goes. It accepts that some opportunities must be ignored so that the most meaningful ones can receive full commitment. In a world where distraction is constant, this discipline becomes extremely powerful. It allows someone to build momentum while others remain scattered. It allows ideas to mature while others abandon them prematurely. It allows vision to evolve while others remain trapped in reaction. There is also a psychological dimension to focus. When the mind concentrates deeply on a challenge, a state known as flow can emerge. In this state, time seems to disappear. The mind becomes fully engaged with the task. Creativity increases, performance improves. Athletes, artists, scientists, and entrepreneurs often describe their most productive moments as periods of intense immersion. But flow rarely appears when attention is fragmented. It requires uninterrupted engagement. The billionaire mindset, therefore, treats focus almost like a sacred resource. Devices are managed carefully. Schedules are structured intentionally. Important thinking is protected from interruption. This discipline may appear simple, but its long-term impact is enormous. Every hour of deep focus compounds into insight. Every insight compounds into better decisions. Every decision compounds into progress. Over time, the gap between focused effort and distracted effort becomes vast. One person builds expertise, clarity, and momentum. Another remains busy but unfocused, constantly reacting to external stimuli. Eventually, their paths diverge dramatically. The billionaire mindset understands that success is rarely about doing more things. It is about doing the right things with extraordinary concentration. When your attention becomes aligned with meaningful goals, your energy stops scattering, your ideas deepen, your execution strengthens, your vision sharpens, and slowly, the noise of the world begins to fade. Because while millions of people are fighting for your attention, the billionaire mindset is quietly directing attention toward building something that truly matters. Topic 10. The ultimate realization. The billionaire mindset is not about money. It is about who you become. At this point, something important should begin to feel clear. The billionaire mindset is not really about billions of dollars. It is about the way a person sees the world, interprets challenges, makes decisions, and shapes their future. Money is often the visible outcome of that mindset, but it is not the origin. The origin is transformation. Because when you study the lives of extraordinary entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators, you start to realize something fascinating. Their external success was always preceded by an internal shift. They began thinking differently long before the world noticed their achievements. Before Amazon dominated global commerce, Jeff Bezos was a man with an unusual perspective about the future of the internet. Before Tesla revolutionized the automotive industry, Elon Musk was someone willing to imagine electric vehicles becoming the future of transportation. Before Warren Buffett became one of the greatest investors in history, he was a young boy studying businesses and learning how money grows through patience and discipline. Their wealth did not create their mindset. Their mindset created their wealth. This realization is incredibly powerful because it means the billionaire mindset is not reserved for a small group of people born into privilege or extraordinary circumstances. It is a way of thinking that can be cultivated. It begins with perception. When you start training your mind to see opportunity where others see obstacles, you begin expanding your awareness of what is possible. Instead of reacting to problems with discouragement, you begin exploring them with curiosity. You start asking questions that open doors rather than closing them. Then comes patience. When you shift your thinking toward the long game, your relationship with time transforms. You begin planting seeds for the future rather than chasing instant gratification. Small improvements accumulate, habits compound, knowledge grows, and slowly, the foundation of a different life begins forming beneath the surface. Learning becomes another pillar. The billionaire mindset understands that the most valuable asset anyone can develop is the capacity to think clearly and understand the world deeply. Books, ideas, experiences, and conversations become tools that sharpen judgment and expand vision. With time, your mind becomes more capable of recognizing patterns and possibilities. Then comes resilience. When failure stops being interpreted as defeat and starts being interpreted as feedback, something liberating happens. You become willing to experiment. You become willing to try again. You become willing to pursue ideas that others abandon too quickly. Every setback becomes part of the refinement process, and refinement eventually leads to mastery. Along the way, your focus strengthens. You begin protecting your attention from distractions that do not contribute to your growth. Instead of scattering your energy across endless noise, you direct it toward meaningful goals. Ideas deepen, strategies improve, progress accelerates, relationships also transform. You begin seeking environments where ambition, creativity, and intelligence flourish. You surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking, expand your perspective, and elevate your standards. Their presence pushes you forward. Your presence pushes them forward. And together, you create momentum that would have been impossible alone. Little by little, these shifts accumulate. At first, they may appear subtle. You think differently about opportunities. You respond differently to challenges. You spend time differently. You focus differently. But over years, those subtle changes reshape the trajectory of your life. Because your results are always reflections of your decisions, and your decisions are always reflections of your mindset. This is the deeper truth behind the billionaire mindset. It is not a magical formula. It is a pattern of thinking that gradually aligns your actions with growth, innovation, and opportunity. Anyone can begin developing this mindset right now. You do not need millions of dollars to start thinking long-term. You do not need a global company to start creating value. You do not need fame or recognition to begin learning, focusing, and building meaningful relationships. All you need is the willingness to see the world differently, to question old assumptions, to train your mind to look beyond limitations. And once that process begins, something remarkable happens. The world starts looking different. Challenges start looking like puzzles instead of barriers. Ideas start appearing where you once saw ordinary situations. Possibilities begin revealing themselves in places you never noticed before. Because the greatest shift does not happen in your bank account. It happens in your perception. And when perception expands, opportunity expands. Eventually, the external world begins reflecting the internal transformation that already took place. Businesses appear, investments grow, opportunities multiply. But by that time, something even more valuable has already been created. You have become the type of person capable of recognizing and building prosperity. And that is the real secret behind the billionaire mindset. It is not about chasing money. It is about becoming someone whose thinking, discipline, curiosity, and vision naturally attract opportunity. Because when your mind evolves, your reality inevitably follows. Before you go, take a moment and reflect on something. If even one of the ideas you heard today shifted the way you think about success, opportunity, or your future, then this video already did something powerful. Because the real purpose of this channel is not just to talk about wealth, it is to help you transform the way you see the world, the way you see opportunities, and the way you see your own potential. The billionaire mindset is not reserved for a few people at the top of the world. It begins the moment you decide to think bigger, learn deeper, and act with purpose. And if you want to keep strengthening that mindset, this channel is designed exactly for you. So if this video inspired you, subscribe to the channel and join a community of people who are committed to growth, prosperity, and higher levels of thinking. If you found value here, like this video. That simple action helps this message reach more people who are searching for a different path in life. And I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, tell me this. Which mindset shift impacted you the most today? Was it long-term thinking, emotional discipline, creating value, or something else that made you see things differently? Your comment might inspire someone else who is beginning their own journey. And finally, if you know someone who dreams about building a bigger future but may still be stuck in old ways of thinking, share this video with them. Sometimes a single idea can change the direction of a life. Thank you for being here. And remember, the journey toward prosperity does not begin with money. It begins with the way you think.